after a while, when you play a lot of punk shows, they all start to look and sound the same, which
Oh,
is
of
funny
course.
because they're
Yes.
very like in their own little world. Like those people in their schools, in their jobs, they stand out and look like individuals. But when you go to a punk convention or punk, music event or concert, you get all the guys that are the weirdos from their area together. They all look the same.
Hey, everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to another Nobody with me, Travis Myers. Today we're going to talk to a very interesting fella I know from my music days named Tyson Plastic of the band The Fantastic Plastics. He's a really, really nice fella. I hope you enjoy our conversation, and that's enough of me. Let's get with Tyson. Hey, everybody, how you doing? I am here today with my good friend, Tyson Plastic. All right? Killer rock and roll guy. He's been in the Fantastic Plastics is his band, which you've been in with your beautiful wife, Miranda. How's she doing, by the way?
Fantastic, obviously.
Fantastic, obviously. Yes, yes. Lovely, lovely woman she is. And you guys are from Peoria, Illinois, correct?
That's where we're based at now. Yep. We kind of got started it's a long story, but we basically got started in New York City, though.
Well, that's where I met you, and that's where I know
That's
you
right.
from when you lived in Brooklyn.
That's
But
right.
well, what in the world brought you there? Did you come to New York for work or for music?
For love.
For love.
Yeah, Miranda was already there. We knew each other going way back a long time, and
Oh.
we had been friends. She had collaborated with some other projects I had, mostly doing uniforms and choreography.
Right.
She's a textile designer, and then yeah, we fell in love, and I moved to New York, and then we picked the band up there, and the rest is history.
Okay, so the Fantastic Plastics did not begin until New York when you moved to get with the lovely Miranda.
Sort of. So the Fantastic Plastics is technically a three-piece band, but the third
Mhm.
member doesn't play live with us. He writes
Right.
and does our videos and everything, and it was just him and I, and he did play. And then when I moved to New York, he obviously didn't move. He was starting a family. He got married and was having kids. And then so Miranda and I sort of rebooted the band there with the songs that we had started with back in Champaign, Illinois.
Okay.
And then we started writing all new stuff when we got to New York.
Well, I certainly can't blame you for that move. And for our listeners who, well, we can't see, all you could see is me and Tyson here anyway. But to give you a description, Miranda to me, has a striking resemblance to Linda Carter. She's got
She
a
would love that. Yes.
real cool Wonder Woman vibe about her. And I mean, really, she could double for Linda Carter in my book. She's a very attractive woman.
That is spot on. She would love that.
Good.
She has a really large collection of Wonder Woman figurines and
Right.
stuff. So yeah, a badass bitchin' brunette, bro.
Yeah. Yes, she is. So yeah, and again for our listeners, so Tyson and I know each other since what, about at least 10 years, maybe 12 years in that neighborhood?
Yeah, I think 2015 or 2014. I'm trying to think. No, because we went to 2013, 2014, sometime around there. I'm guessing. I can't remember, but
All right. And we started out, he used to hit the Fantastic Plastics would play my pub, Snapper McGee's, on occasion.
that's right. And it was always fun because that place had a built-in crowd, which is rare these days, especially. And people just really liked loud live original music. In fact, you wouldn't allow us to play covers. I remember.
That's correct. That is correct.
And
That was a
we
no-no.
appreciated
It
that.
was strictly
Yeah.
original music. So
Yeah.
strictly in the rock and roll vein and strictly original, which a lot of people could not get over, but it worked for us.
You also wouldn't serve Red Bull, which I realize now as a more grown adult why you didn't. But I thought that was strange. But now I'm like, Red Bull causes problems.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. That's all you need is somebody to be drunk and very, very, I don't know what the word is, energized.
Liquid cocaine.
Exactly. Liquid cocaine. There you go. There you go. So it was
Anyway.
a while. Tell us a little bit now, just, so people can get to know you before we get into all the music and stuff like that. You grew up in Peoria, Illinois. all right, which
Yep.
I know nothing about, but I know it is a fairly decent city, right?
Yeah, I grew up in a farm town about 20, 30 miles outside of Peoria,
Oh,
in a
okay.
very like rural area. So I kind of grew up in like a just an old farm town, that had like been a coal mining town, a farm town, and but Peoria was like the metropolis where we would go on the weekends, and as soon as we got cars, we would spend all of our time in Peoria because that's where all the action was. But Peoria is mostly famous for it's the hometown of Richard Pryor. It's where he was born. His family owned a brothel there, which was then destroyed when they put through the interstate system. And then Sam Kinison got his start there. Gary Richrath from REO Speedwagon's from there. Dan Fogelberg, and
Lots of
Caterpillar
people.
Tractors. So there you go.
And they make glass there, right?
They
It's a
do.
big glass town.
I don't know if, well, actually, I don't know if that, I mean, I would say yes, but Peoria has actually got its first fame, and not many people know this. This is actually really interesting. Peoria was the whiskey capital of the world pre-Prohibition,
I did
and
not
its
know that.
entire riverfront was just nothing but distilleries and warehouses. And in old historical texts, it's I can't remember who, but Lincoln or someone famously said that basically tax from alcohol fueled the North side of the war, and so the Peoria fueled the sales tax from whiskey made in Peoria fueled the Civil War. And
Interesting.
then Prohibition came in and devastated the whole town. And they didn't offer any, the government back then there was no bailouts. It was just like, this is illegal now, and your city is effed. And Caterpillar was a bicycle company, moved in, picked up all the cheap labor, and started a tractor factory, and then had a nice run for a while. Sorry, I won't go into any more, but
No,
there you
no,
go.
that's fine. We're here to have a conversation. I knew it for glass when I say glass because I can't remember which company it is, if it's Anchor or what. When we would buy glasses for the bar, they were made in Peoria, Illinois.
Well, that's fascinating. See,
Yeah.
I
And it's
did
one of
not
the
know
big
that.
companies, Libby or Anchor or what is the other one? Hawk something? I can't think of the name of it right now. There's like three major glass manufacturers. I believe one of them was from Peoria.
There's a
But
lot
I
of
could be wrong.
industry.
What do I know?
Yeah,
You know?
who knows?
Yeah.
It's a bootlegger city, though, that's for sure. So then I grew up in Farmington. Yeah, my hometown was actually called Farmington. It was like a tiny, tiny, tiny town. And then I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, so
I don't know, but I know you did tell me. You told me a story one time. If you want to share it, I don't know if you do. Um, about some adventures you had when you were a young paper boy, as a young man and growing up in your town.
that's right. So right around, I was 10 years old when I first got my first paper route. And I was a paper boy until I was 16. So for 6 years, I guess, I was a paper boy. And it was the only job you could legally have as a child, which is crazy now because, I would get up at 5 or 6 in the morning, depending on what day it was, and deliver papers. Sometimes it was dark. And then totally alone, a child
Yep.
on a bicycle delivering papers all around town. And it was funny because when I was a kid, this movie came out. It was a Stephen King short story that got turned into a movie called Stand By Me. I think most
Oh,
people know.
I know it very well. Sure.
And so it was funny because as kids, we would get our BB guns and our bikes and we would get on the railroad tracks and just ride as far as we could go in either direction. Just, kind of hoping to see a dead body,
Yeah.
not really understanding the gravity of what that would be if that ever happened. But then one day, so I was a paper boy, and I had this one customer that only got her paper on the weekends, and she was a real pain in the ass. She had gotten polio or something when she was a kid, and she was kind of crippled. She could kind of stand, but she had kind of like canes or whatever. But she was just grouchy, and I realized that she just didn't really know how to talk to people,
Yeah.
and so I just let her rage on me every time I delivered the paper, and I'd just smile, and it didn't matter. I could deliver the paper at 5 in the morning; it would be too early. If I delivered at 7 in the morning, it was too late. I didn't fold it, whatever it was. It's fine. But it was literally she would meet me at the door every single time I delivered the paper. And so Saturday rolls around and I go to deliver paper and she doesn't come. And I know she had some mail sitting there, uncollected. And I thought, well, maybe she's gone or whatever. Sunday rolls around, my Saturday paper's there. I'm thinking maybe I should tell someone, but I didn't. And so then next weekend comes around, Saturday comes around, more mail, my papers are still there. And I was like, okay, if she doesn't pick up the paper tomorrow, I've got to do something about this. And this is like in the summer. This is probably like July or something, or August. And so I start to look around, I knock on the door, no one answers. I'm looking in her windows and I see something in the kitchen, just like a slump, whatever. I couldn't see what it was, but I instinctually knew what I thought it was, and
You
so
knew something wasn't right.
Yeah, all the signs point, and I knew she didn't have any family or anything, so I didn't really know what to do. So I called the cops, and by this point I had finished my paper route, and there was a gas station across the street from her house. And so I'm telling people, I go in the gas station and tell my parents, and it's like, hey, I think this lady died, and like, just being like, I was probably at this point, maybe 13 or something, but it's still funny. It's like curiosity. It's not funny. It's just a curiosity. So this crowd starts gathering around the gas station across the street. Small town, there's nothing else to do, And so the cop goes in and he's like going the front and the back, and we're like watching him. And so then he goes and he like kicks in the front door. He must have seen something.
Yes.
And he walks in. This is so gross, but he walks in and immediately turns around and barfs and on the front lawn. And, within 30 seconds, the smell makes its way across the street, and everyone's gagging. So she'd been dead for over 2 weeks. So
yeah. And that house was, smelled terrible.
Bad. Terrible. And then the fire department comes and they're wearing like, it's not really scuba gear, but like a scuba tank and a mask. And they eventually come out with a body bag, and there's a guy on each end of the body bag, and it looks like they have a bowling ball in the body bag. There's like, anyway, long story short, she had basically been dead for like, I don't know, 15 or 16 days, and she was decomposed. Yeah. And then maybe this more. I don't know, like how fast does this stuff happen that they turn into like...
Well, again, in the summertime, it happens quicker, Depends on the temperature, on the moisture level, on, bugs and things like that people have in their house. People don't even realize quite often that you have bugs in your house, but they come alive for things like this, It's like, have you ever done that? You open up a box of pasta or a loaf of bread, and how the hell do these bugs get in there?
Where did they come?
Because they're there, And so it's always different. But yes, it's a horrific scene, and I've been to that. When I was on the job in the Bronx, I've been to many, many of those. It would come over the radio. It was a foul odor, and you always knew what it was, you know. And you'd get inside, and there'd be some, sometimes a homicide, but more often than not, some poor old fella or old woman who passed away, and nobody knew. Nobody checked on him, Yeah. And now it's
not until
two weeks have gone by, and in the wintertime, the windows are closed, the doors are closed, and the heat is on, and it can be quite ripe, to say the least.
Yeah, especially those radiators. I know when we lived in Brooklyn, like our apartment was either 40 degrees or 100 degrees.
Yes.
But anyway, there's a kind of a funny end to this story. So anyway, they took care of whatever. And then the house, they just left the windows and the doors open like the rest of the summer into the fall, like with just fans, and like, I don't think she even had any relatives. I don't know what happened to the house. Long story short, the house went up for sale. No one would touch it because everyone knew what happened. Everyone knew how bad it smelled. My aunt ended up buying it for like a huge discount because no one would buy it. And then I remember they thought it was haunted, and they eventually moved out. And I remember I spent the night once and we saw things. To this day, I don't really believe in ghosts, but like we saw an apparition.
Right.
And so anyway, my aunt got a nice house out of it and eventually sold it. And I think she made some money on the deal.
Maybe, and the old lady was just coming back to say, thanks for finding me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you what took you so long.
But I was also I was a little shit when I had a paper route too. And there was a bowling alley that had like, those old school signs where you put the letters on them, and they were usually on wheels, and they had like an arrow with the lights that would point to the business. And then they would just change a sign like, Monday open league or whatever, that kind of stuff. And I would just rearrange the sign because it'd be like, in the morning, no one was around. And I would rearrange the sign and make it say, whatever, inappropriate things. And sometimes I would block traffic and reroute it to detours to other streets. Because like the construction companies would leave their stuff. I'm like, this is hilarious. So I'd reroute traffic through some poor person, not poor, but like some unfortunate person's, unfortunate in that it was a nuisance to them to have cars driving past their house at 5 a.m. when they normally didn't have traffic.
Yeah. And you just wanted to be a rascal and turn everything around on people.
Yeah.
Nah,
And anyway,
kids in the
and I
city
got
used to
away
do
with
that
it
all
all.
the time in the Bronx. They would turn the street signs around, bend them around so they face the wrong way, and then you don't know which street is which.
Yeah.
Giant pain in the ass.
But I never stole stop signs because I knew that was like potentially dangerous. But
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, that was a paper boy, and that was really something. Rain or shine, 365 days a year. Never got a day off. I think my parents loved that they never had to worry.
Well, I tell you what, I don't know how they do it now. I bet nobody wants to do that job now.
Yeah, I think they do it through the mail. I don't even
Do it
think
through the
they have
mail.
paper boys anymore. I think they have some
The
kind of
whole thing
deal.
too. It's sad. Newspapers are dying altogether. It's like a dying thing, unfortunately. I
Yeah.
remember being a kid, and of course, in the city was different. We used to get two papers a day. There was an early edition and a late edition.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's how important newspapers were. And now, they barely exist. I don't know how they survive it all. So
Yeah, and they don't really do local news anymore and stuff, so it's pretty tough.
no.
But anyway, yeah, it was a different time. That's a time capsule.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I've
How,
got Paperboy shoulder. Oh my
how old
god.
were you? I know you had another interesting job, right? It was interesting to you. Was that in high school or in college when you worked at the pawn shop?
I was in college. Yeah. I was a history. So I was going to college with the ultimate goal of becoming a history professor. That's why I had this dream of being like a college professor teaching history and sociology. And so I knew some guys that worked at a pawn shop through the band circuit, and like everyone in bands are familiar with pawn shops because you get used gear. Like my first bass guitar and my first guitars were both bought at pawn shops. And so I ended up getting a job at a pawn shop, and man, I could talk forever about it. But we had some wild stories. I know you're a true crime podcast, so I actually thought of a question to come back to you and ask. But like when I worked there, we had a love-hate relationship with the police, and that everything that we bought or took in on what they called a loan, a pawn. So a pawn, it has like their little symbols, like a 3-circle thing. It means
The three balls.
Yeah, buy, sell, trade. And so any transaction where you're taking something in, at least in Illinois at that time, you had to document it fully with serial numbers, and you had to get like a picture of the person's driver's license.
Yep.
And then at the end of the night, all of that stuff got faxed to the police department, and then they ran it against like reports of stolen items. And so for the cops, we made their job easy if we were doing our job right. And I was pretty naive, and I just, I was like, cops are cool. Yeah, I'll do this. And I remember one day the owner came over and he's like, it's nice that you're helping the cops, but when you buy these things and they come and get confiscated, we may never be made whole for the purchase.
Correct.
And sometimes we are, whatever. And he's like, so you got to be careful. He's like, I'm not saying to buy stolen stuff. If you think something is stolen, you shouldn't buy it,
Correct.
And meanwhile, we were buying 100 DVDs a day from people that were clearly stealing.
Right.
But I stayed out of that side of the business. But anyway, I'm just curious, like you as a cop, a former police officer, or is that a secret?
No, it's not a secret at all. No. No, this is not my undercover gig here as a podcaster. No, I was, yes, a New York City police officer and detective. Correct.
Yeah. Did you work with the pawn shops? Were you friendly with them, or did you? Or
actually,
was that not really?
There weren't too many pawn shops in the precinct that I worked at, but there were, rather than pawn shop, jewelry shops, for instance, that would buy used jewelry, and just all kinds of little, oh, geez, I don't even know what we would call them, but small little mom and pop, kind of gifty, knick-knacky kind of shops, and they were actually more like illegal pawn shops,
Yeah.
and they would, buy stolen goods and fence them through the shops, absolutely. But something I never really dealt with, no. So
it's a fascinating thing because, like, it's easy to say like pawn shops are predatory financiers or whatever, which they are to some degree. It's like in Illinois, it was 20% interest. So if you brought something in for pawn, meaning a loan, and it was worth $100, let's say we gave you $100 for it let's say we gave that to you on January 1st. That meant on February 1st, you either had to buy it back, which now is $120. So we gave you $100. Now you, and if you didn't, we'd give you 3 months. So then, the March comes around, now you owe $140. or February comes around 140, March comes around 160, whatever. And then at that point, we can sell your item. It's considered forfeited.
Yes. Yep.
Um,
And you know what? I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Where I'll argue with you as far as the predatory thing, okay? In that, because I know people feel like that way when things don't go right for them.
Right.
Okay. But it's a deal that you make. You're hard up for money. You're desperate for money. And you know what? I have whatever it is, this item that I can sell, a piece of jewelry, you name it. Anything can get pawned if the pawn dealer is willing to take it. Okay. Yep. And I can get a quick loan and I can pay it back. But that 20%, okay, is cheaper than what your credit card is going to pay you.
Well, that's what I was getting at. I agree with you.
Or rather than what you're going to pay your credit card is what I want to say. When you look at your credit card, it's 28, 30%.
Yep. And this is what I was going to say is that the pawn shops exist to supply credit for those that cannot get credit.
They cannot. Well, that's why loan sharks, and I know you have them in Peoria. And of course, we had them all over my neighborhood. You can quite often get a better deal from a Shylock than you can from the bank or the credit cards. You're better off. The only difference is that you must pay them or you're going to be in trouble with them.
Yeah.
But then don't get that wrong either, because they won't loan. They're smart people. And a smart money lender will not lend to somebody if he doesn't think they're going to get the money back.
Yeah. And I mean, in a pawn shop, you're getting your collateral up front. And
exactly.
So,
exactly.
And usually if you brought something in that was worth $100, like I could buy it from you today for $100. I'll give you $100 and you can walk away with your $100. Or I'll give you 80 for it as a loan, knowing that I'll still get 100 if you don't come back for it. You know what I mean? Like it's, yes. But some funny ways people abused that. There was a guy at our pawn shop famously who was going through a divorce who had a very large and expensive gun collection. And he didn't want his wife to take that in part of the divorce. Mm-hmm. So he brought the entire collection. We were the only pawn shop like in downstate Illinois or wherever this area that could deal with guns. Excuse me. And so we took his guns and we gave him like $1 a piece for them. Yeah. So he brought in like, I don't know, it was dozens of guns. I never even, I saw them, but I didn't count them. And then every month he just paid a little bit of interest, basically storage fee. And he had a deal worked out with our owner until the divorce was over. And then he was going to come get them all. But I worked there for at least 2 years and they were there the whole time because the divorce was so stretched out. But the gun thing was weird.
That was more of a service that your boss did for this gentleman.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was not on the up and up. But it wasn't like the pawn shop illegal. Wasn't committing, we didn't know that, this guy just brought his guns in, but I wasn't very sophisticated with guns. Like I grew up around hunters and stuff, but I didn't really ever shoot other than shooting trap. And a guy brought in a gun one day, and I'm looking at it and the owner came and like smacked me across the head and grabbed the gun and like, whatever, cocked it and the shotgun shells like came out and he like grabbed the guy by the scruff. He's like, "You mother effer, you never bring a loaded gun in here again." And then he grabbed me by the other, like, "You idiot, you never," he's like, "Make sure." He's like, "That guy you could have just shot yourself in the face." And like, so from that point forward, I wasn't allowed to deal with the guns, which I was fine with. But this, I don't know if this is legal or not, but we had so pawn shops have booths, at least where we were at, so that you have some privacy when you're negotiating so that people can't see what you're selling and negotiating with. But all of the booths had like 40 caliber like Glocks with hollow points, and then they had like shaved wood in front. And so like if someone pulled a gun, you could just pull the trigger, it would shoot through the wood and shoot him right in the dick.
Oh, wow.
Like I don't know how legal that was. And then around the corner, I know this wasn't legal. Like around the corner, we had sawed-off shotguns like against the wall that were like ready to go,
Right.
Crazy shit happened. Like the month before I started working there was a series of people robbing banks around Bloomington, Illinois. And the people that worked there got wind of who it was, and they were in the store. And, they had the FBI and they had all the government agencies like, you got to keep them in the store, stall them as long as you can, because they were trying to sell stuff. Yeah. And so they kept going, okay, we got to check with the whatever. And then they, the cops came out with a whole raid, and those people were armed,
Mm-hmm.
But I luckily avoided all the really scary stuff. It was a cool job though. Like we saw all sorts of stuff. Like,
oh yeah, all kinds of different interesting items come through too.
Yeah.
Well, how many different TV shows have they made about pawn shops now?
There's only one that I've seen that's real, and that's the one that was based in Detroit. Hardcore Pawn.
Okay.
That was the closest to the.
Well, everything on TV is fake, but when you
Sure.
say real, like the one, what is it? Whatever the famous one that's in Vegas, that's
Yeah, that
probably
one's
the biggest one.
that's the most bullshit TV show.
But I know that the store itself was fake, but they had a real one like down the block.
Yes, they are real pawnbrokers with a real store, but what they did on the TV show is never happens that way. You never bring an item to like a front desk for everyone to see and negotiate out in the open, and you're not calling experts that charge hundreds of dollars an hour to come in and like, I mean, it made for good TV. It was fun, but the Hardcore Pawn, I think was what it was called. That was more real because they had the booths and they're fucking, excuse me, I don't know if I shouldn't cuss, but they're throwing people out of their store on a regular basis, which is very real when you work in a real pawn shop. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, you remember my place in Kingston, Snapper McGee's in Kingston, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So there was a pawn shop right across the street from there that was there for decades. And this tough little Jewish woman named Sam worked it. And she always had a pistol hanging off of her belt. So you could see when you walked in, you knew she was armed because she was a cute little thing, about 5'4", something like that. And yeah, real
hard
tough.
as nails.
She was a real toughie, man, because she had to deal with these guys all the time. And for the most part, she worked in there alone, And but anyway, yeah, it was the thing with that, again, she was in no way, shape, or form a seedy woman at all. And I always found it interesting, all the different things that I would see in there, just crazy stuff that would show up. But the seediness comes again from desperate people.
Yep.
Trying to make a quick buck, I
mean, there's a whole, like, it's easy for, I mean, I don't want to get too much into this conversation, I guess, but like, there's people that grow up from the time they're born outside of the system, yes, either because of poverty or whatever it is, and they live in this gray area that's outside of the norm. And I don't think people fully appreciate that's how their life is. It's not that they're
you're talking to a New York City guy.
Right. I know
New York City
it.
Street kid.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about, but what you're doing is a very, very good point. Most people don't understand this,
Yeah.
and don't understand how desperate people are. And desperate people are not always bad people, but desperate people do desperate acts because they have to survive. They got to get by,
Yep.
And so, yeah, crime quite often becomes a part of it,
Yep.
just to get by. Just, I say that all the time. I've literally been involved in probably well over 1,000, if not thousands, of narcotics arrests, right? Not mine personally, but ones that I've mixed up with everybody else.
Sure.
But I actually understand drug dealing. I don't condone it, I think drugs are a terrible, terrible burden on society. They destroy neighborhoods, they destroy families, they destroy lives. But myself, if I was a young man and I had nothing going on, I would sell drugs before I'd starve,
right.
Yes. And that's how simple that is.
You got to take care of yourself and your family. And
absolutely you do. Absolutely.
And there's like a whole drug industry that like sells people heroin, but they call it, opioids or whatever they call it. I'm not trying to equate it, but I'm just saying it's hard to call one group of people bad and the other one good just because they're work in the system.
Pfizer or whoever it is doing the exact same thing. Okay.
Exactly.
In a much more nefarious manner, in my opinion. Okay. And we just like back to the loan shark, Shylock thing we were just talking about. It's been since the beginning of time, there have been money lenders. People need money, and some people can't go to the bank. So you go to your local guy,
And that's what I'm talking about. The people that are outside of the system, they've been iced out somehow, whether you're talking about credit or regular jobs or blah, 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 a million things,
Well, I know very successful people who've borrowed money simply because they can't wait for the bank.
Right.
It's a great business deal. I got to take care of this right now. They'll borrow the money, and as soon as they get it set up, boom, they pay it back, and or get the loan from the bank and pay off their loan shark,
Yep.
So,
well, anyway, so that was a cool job, and
yes.
The pawn shop.
And you ended up not being a history professor. Instead, you decided to be a rock star.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
We're still working on that? Is that what it is?
I got to tell you, I'm glad I got out of the pawn shop when I did, though, because a couple weeks ago, the pawn shop I worked at was raided, and everyone that I worked there with was like hauled in, and I mean, they're not admitting this to me, but I know what's going on. They're basically going to hold charges over their heads so they can rat out the guy that owns it. The guy that owned it when I lived there, or when I worked there, died, and he sold it. But the guy that owns it now owns like five, and they're basically charging him with like money laundering and all this, and buying, or maybe not money laundering, but knowingly buying and moving stolen goods, and part of a criminal enterprise. And I'm like, I could have just worked there being an honest person doing an honest thing, and then be caught up in the middle of it. And now these people have to get lawyers, and they're,
oh yeah, it's a nightmare.
It's a mess.
It's a nightmare.
Mess. Yeah.
Well, but for you, that was what, 20?
It was like 2006, 2008, I think is when I worked there.
Oh, really? That recently?
Yeah. And then I graduated college, and then I tried to get a real job. And then I kind of got a real job, and then did the band stuff.
Right.
I was still doing the band stuff then, but
you know what? I tell you what, Tyson, we're going to take a break right here real quick, okay? And then we're going to come back and talk all about your rock and roll lifestyle. How's that sound? All right, brother. We'll be right back, everybody.
You are.
Hey, how you doing? It's me again, another nobody, Travis Myers. And today we're going to talk whiskey. I know most of you think of me as an all-American patriotic type guy, and you are right. But when it comes to whiskey, and drinking whiskey, which I do, I always go for the Irish stuff. And my choice, when it comes to the Irish stuff, is Powers Irish Whiskey. Established back in 1791, it's a triple distilled, oak-aged whiskey. Powers is simply magic. It also happens to be the #1 selling whiskey in Ireland, which has got to say something, because if it's good enough for the Irish, it's good enough for you. So the next time you raise a glass, fill it with Powers, and think of me, another nobody, Travis Myers. Hey there, true crime fans. Let me introduce you today to the Cold Case Initiative. The Cold Case Initiative is a foundation that donates money to smaller police agencies all over the country. It does this in order to offset the costs of scientific, forensic, and DNA testing, with the hope of solving cold case homicides and other horrific violent crimes that otherwise would remain unsolved. Please, if you have it in your heart and a little money to spare, go to www.coldcaseinitiative.org. Again, that's www.coldcaseinitiative.org, and lend a hand where it truly is needed. Be a part of solving a cold case. Every little bit helps. Know that 100% of the donations that go to the Cold Case Initiative go to agencies that are desperately in need of the help. So please, if you can, do the right thing and make a donation. Thanks, and all the best, my friends. All right, everybody. We are back with my friend here, Tyson Plastic, who's going to now kind of introduce us to how, well, working a regular job simply wasn't for you. You're not built that way, are you?
I mean, I do work a regular job, but I've severed my work brain from my art brain, and but the music is obviously my passion.
Yes.
And this is going to be corny, but I remember exactly how it all happened. Music didn't really matter a whole lot to me as a kid growing up. Like, I think my first records I ever had, my mom was a bartender, and she would bring home like the 7-inches, they'd put in the jukeboxes.
I do.
I guess she just was able to keep them, I guess. So I had this huge collection.
You want to hear a 7-inch story before you get started?
Yeah, please.
I don't want to interrupt you at all, because you're
go ahead.
To be telling the stories, not me.
Go ahead.
But when I was 12 years old, I used to wash dishes in a bar called Willie's Saloon. All right, on Third Avenue, Third Avenue, New York City. It was a like the hub of the neighborhood. All right, and it was a great job for me. I learned more working in that bar than I ever learned going to school. And there was a fella in there. He was like the main bartender, head bartender guy. His name was John Pierce. And he would give me a bunch of money, and not a bunch of money, he'd give me a few dollars. And I'd run up to 86th Street to King Carroll Records with a list of all the new 45s, 7-inches that were going to go in the 45s.
That's.
And whatever came out of the jukebox, I got to keep. And that was for me making the trip. I'd get to keep them. He also did something that really turned me on to live shows and to big music. He would send me down. Again, I'm 12, 13 years old. He would send me down to Madison Square Garden. Again, a couple $100, because shows were cheap back then, $10, $15 a ticket. A couple $100, and I would buy like 10, 15 tickets for the bar. And the whole bar would go, okay? When the whole bar, a group of people from the bar would go, everybody would pay for their tickets. And they would always take me, because I was the kid. My payment for going and waiting in line, there was no computers back then. There was no Ticketmaster. There was nothing like that, And I would go wait in line, buy a dozen or 2 dozen tickets, go back to the bar, and then they would take me. So here I am, this 12-year-old kid, hanging out with grown men, they were all young men. They were all in their mid-20s, but they were real rock and roll type guys, going to shows and all their hot girlfriends. I mean, these were women to me. They were serious women when you're 12 and they're 22,
Tell me more about them.
Yes, exactly. It was great, man. That was a great little slice of life for me. I really enjoyed that. But anyway, again, we're not talking about me. Good, let's get back to you.
Oh, no, that was good. So anyway, my mom worked at this bar. She got to take home the records. And this is like around the time, I don't want to give away my age too much, but, MTV is starting to be a big thing too at this point. And out of all the records that I would take home, the ones that I can remember this day, there was like 4 sort of ones that like I loved the most, that stuck out in my head. And then it kind of matched up with MTV. There was Michael Jackson. So this was like during the Beat It Thriller era. Mm-hmm. There was Van Halen. And I remember the 170, I wish I still had it. It had the angel on the front smoking a cig. Yes. And it was for Jump, I think. And then Twisted Sister. And then Devo. And the funny thing is about those 4 are that they're all like a combination. They're performers. They're not just musicians. Like, David Lee Roth is the rock and roll clown. He's like the ultimate front man. Like, whether you like his voice or not, like Van Halen without David Lee Roth was not the same band,
Yes,
and then,
absolutely.
Obviously Twisted Sister, they got the costumes, they got the whole look, Michael Jackson's up there dancing his ass off. And then we all know Devo, right? Yeah. And then, of course, MTV's coming out, and those new wave videos were just like, and I'm like very young, like I'm like in first, second grade or whatever. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You were going to say something.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you, but you guys, the Fantastic Plastics, to me, really have a Devo, Newman / B-52's sound and feel. I mean, it is all of that sound compressed into 2 people.
The DNA.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then, but I never really thought about I hadn't really like considered being in a band, and then fast forward to, I'm in high school, and music, when I first got like through junior high and high school, was pretty lame. It was a lame era. Like, this is like early 90s and late 80s, early 90s. They're just, we're talking like cock rock, butt rock, like the hair, like Poison, all that stuff. Like that didn't appeal to me. Yeah. And then you had like the pop side, and then you had U2, which didn't really appeal to me, but they were kind of the alternative. And then I can still, like, I'm getting chills thinking about it. The Smells Like Teen Spirit video hits MTV. It's like nothing I've ever seen. And it changed my life. Like, I'm getting a guitar. I'm going to start a band. Like, nothing made me want to pick up a guitar ever like that. And then, anyway, long story short.
Well, Nirvana for you guys, for your age group, was kind of like The Clash for us.
Oh, yeah. I could see that.
I mean, it was one of those things. I mean, there's so many bands from my time that I love. But what does it say about The Clash? It's the only band that matters. That's what that was the band. And that when I talk to, again, people who are a little bit younger than me, Nirvana was like the next big boom that showed up in the music world.
Yeah, and well, the cool thing about The Clash too is, like, they're pretty punk rock, but when I listen to it now, and I didn't really pick up on this until recently, I was listening to them again, like their stuff is all dancey. Like, I'm not saying they're inspired by disco, but there's a dance beat to all of their stuff, but it's still edgy as hell, but you want to dance to it. The Sex Pistols, I get why they're important, but their music's also just, it gets monotonous. A lot of that stuff gets monotonous because there's not much deviation in the rhythms, but yeah. So anyway,
for me too, and for all of this stuff, there's, for most bands, there's even bands I don't like, there's always a song that clicks for you,
There has to be, right?
But when it comes to bands like you're saying, the Sex Pistols, they were almost like a one-trick pony, where the Clash was just so very talented and
all over the place.
so broad-minded with their music. It really was. And again, that was a big, very serious band for me in my time.
And then so then I joined my friend's band. I bought a bass at a pawn shop. I joined a band. It was called the Massaged Llamas.
The Massage Llamas.
Yeah. So stupid. And then I started doing my own music. And I remember in my mind, as I'm like recording my first like thing I ever recorded by myself, it was just like a solo thing. And I went to this guy's studio and I just brought the songs and he played drums. And in my mind, like I made the next Nirvana record, right? In my mind.
Yes.
It was all full of piss and vinegar, but all the songs are about these weirdos in my town and all this stuff. And so there was a local record store where you could, sell your local music on consignment. And then there was a zine. This was like the time when zines were a big deal, and they would review local stuff. And I was so excited because someone told me that the big local zine in the town reviewed my record. And I was so excited. And he like eviscerated it. And all he said at the end was, "This guy's been listening to too much Ween." He kept mentioning Ween. And so I went in the record store and I'm like, man, I was like a kid. I mean, I'm like maybe 16, 17 or something. And he's like, you got to lay off the Ween. And I'm like, I've never heard Ween, And he's like, oh my God. He's like, I feel bad. He's like, did you just make this on your own? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, here. And he gave me this tape called Pure Guava by this band Ween. And that changed, like, then that was like another thing. So I had this like thing with the rock and roll showman. I had the thing with the new wave stuff. I had the angry stuff with Nirvana. And then I got into Ween and this guy Beck. And then I like went on a totally different, I'm going too far off on a tangent, but like all that together then like brought this thing where like I always wanted to make music that had like an edge to it. It was fast and upbeat. I always wanted to make music that was super poppy that people would want to sing along to, but then I wanted to use synthesizers and drum machines and all that. And so I got lost in the sauce, but I didn't mean to become an outsider musician making outsider music. I thought I was making something different.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, Ween.
But in the end, when did the Fantastic Plastics actually happen? That happened it didn't happen in New York. You just said before.
Well, sort of felt there. I was in some other bands and I had toured around quite a bit with some other bands. And then I decided I was going to make the last band I was ever going to be in. And so with my friend Dylan, we call him Chicken Burger Disco. And I kind of in my head, I knew at this point I had done all these other musical projects. I'm like, okay, so we had an idea, a defined sound more. And we knew we wanted to be like neo new wave, I guess is what you'd call it, mixed with like, the edginess of dance punk. And that's how we wound up. And that was like in 2010. So, this is like, 10, 12 years after I had first, picked up a guitar and started playing in a band. So it wasn't just like the first thing we did. Like there was definitely a concentrated effort to have a sound and a look because and to this day, I would love to, if I was younger, I would just start all over again because now we've learned even more about like, it's so important, the first record. You don't just give away the first record. You don't just like throw it out there. You need to build up this whole thing. And, we would just record something and throw it out, and
yes.
Anyway, it doesn't matter, but it helps to have a defined presence.
Well, that's everything. The whole hindsight is 2020,
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of truth to that. We would have all, but you landed in a good place because the Fantastic Plastics has got a great sound,
Thank you.
It's gotten you've toured all over the country. Many
thanks to
times.
you getting us on Warped Tour in 2017.
Well, that was quite a show, that wasn't it?
We still think to this day, by the way, that they did not mean to pick us because they had like an announcement thing and they had our name wrong and they had a different band. And then when we got paid the first time, they still didn't have our name right. And I remember when we went to the orientation, they were confused. I think there was a fluke and we got on Warped Tour. I think you did the right thing and got us on there, but I think that they confused us with another band and thought you were managing this other band or label, whatever you want to call it, connection. And there was a band from Florida called Fantastic Planet or something like that.
Really?
And
you never told me this.
I thought I did. It doesn't matter. I mean, they loved us though. I mean, I think the people that worked we were like the year we were on Warped Tour, aside from Guar, we were all the band's favorite band. Like when we would play, all the other bands would come watch us play because they just liked what we were doing. We were doing something different. And I don't mean this any disrespect, but like after a while, when you play a lot of punk shows, they all start to look and sound the same, which is funny because they're very like in their own little world. Like those people in their schools, in their jobs, they stand out and look like individuals. But when you go to a punk convention or punk, music event or concert, you get all the guys that are the weirdos from their area together. They all look the same. They all have the battle jackets, similar hair, different variations on a theme.
Well,
but we're
actually
wearing
something that I've always found with things like you've played. Help me out with my own things that I can't even think now. Upstart Fest, you've been on that, and you came to the camp out, the antisocial camp out, right?
Yeah, that was my favorite one.
For our listeners now that don't know what we're talking about large punk rock festivals and tours that have taken place. And one of them that we had done years ago was the Upstart antisocial camp out is what it was called.
The one in the Catskills, right?
Yep, in upstate New York.
Borscht Belt.
And the beauty of that show and the beauty of other shows that we've done too is when you build a show, I think it's so important to have many different kinds of artists. Because if it's all the same, it can, no matter how good they are, it can become quite boring to have, the same street punk band, or rockabilly band, and it just turns into one homogenous, boring show where, I'm watching the fifth band, it's the same as the first band.
And they're all great individually, but when you put them all together,
they could be fantastic.
Yeah, yep.
But now you hit me over the head with the same street punk sound over and over again. It can become dull. Where it is the breaking it up, the bands that you like better, or being introduced to something else, just gives it. Well, it's like eating dinner. You got to have 4 or 5 things on the plate. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
If you just had one thing on the plate, no matter how tasty it is, it gets really boring because they don't complement each other.
Man, I have to thank you so much, though, because you gave us so much credibility by putting us on those tours. And I think the punk kids got that we kind of had that Devo B-52s vibe. They like that we look different. Our guitars are raw. We have like the sort of the basics of a punk, but we're not, we don't sound like the Ramones or whatever. But no, that gave us so much credibility. We're
good. Good. I'm glad I helped you out. And in again, in my opinion, well, what is punk?
It's an ideology to me more than a sound.
Exactly.
And that's why Devo is punk rock.
If the Rancid, who I love, but if you're going to tell me that all those Rancid kids are more punk rock than, the Ramones fans who are more punk rock than the Talking Heads fans, it's all silly nonsense. It really is, either it's good or it's not. Those are the two kind of musics you have, good and not so good. And yes, punk is more of an ideology, more of an ethos, and I agree with you. Are you going to tell me that the B-52s or Devo or Blondie are not punk rock? Of course they are. That's where they were born,
Blondie is so fucking good. The older I get, the more I'm just like, holy shit. What's
Blondie
crazy?
Was a great band.
Debbie Harry is not that much older than Paul McCartney. Because, the Beatles started as teenagers, but Blondie didn't get famous till she was like 30.
Yeah.
And same with the girl from Sonic Youth, Kim Gordon. Sonic Youth got famous when they were in their 30s. She's not much younger than Debbie Harry. She's not much younger than Paul McCartney. It's a very tight,
No, that's exactly what happens. Sometimes, they get discovered early, and other times they get discovered quite a bit later. So, yeah. So
no ageism in punk rock, man.
Warped was such a big thing. I know it's been gone for a long time, but I hear it's coming back.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I know they tried some cruises and some stuff. No, when I was on Warped Tour, though, or when we were on Warped Tour, what we heard from the people in the offices that what was happening. So this is 2017. That was right around what I would call peak summer festivals.
Yeah.
And so what happened is, the music industry, especially touring, got super corporate, and touring is freaking expensive. No one was making money touring. And so all these festivals started popping up, like Bonnaroo. Yes. I forget the names of all of them, but you know what I'm talking about. Like the one out in California, the ones, all over.
Yes.
And so what happened was these big acts, they would get into this festival circuit. So they would do those. They would do multiple of these festivals, and they would only do them on the weekend. And sometimes it'd be once every 2 weeks. Yeah. And they could make more money from that. And so basically what happened is Warped Tour couldn't get quality headliners because they didn't want to have a show every freaking day for 3 months through the summer on a freaking bus, playing shows on Mondays and Tuesdays, Wednesdays, long drives where they could just fly in, basically parachute in for a weekend at something like Bonnaroo. And then 2 weeks later, they're flying out to California for something. Then 2 weeks later, and the shows are bigger, they're getting paid more, and they have their weeks to themselves and their family, and they couldn't compete with it. And so that's what I heard basically killed Warped Tour, was that just no any band that was big enough to anchor that tour would rather play those festivals. Sure. And I don't know, maybe something's changed and those festivals are dying.
Well, I can see that, but again, and then maybe it's the old guy in me though too, I want to say blame makes it sound like it's intentional, but the fact that young people don't like music the way that we did when we were kids, they just don't.
I think that you're half right. They don't like music that we recognize the same way. Because if you look at what's happening in like those EDM scenes and those freaking like pop scenes, like, people go crazy for like the Taylor Swift stuff,
I will correct myself, my friend. Okay, I will correct myself. People aren't digging the rock and roll the way that we did.
Guitar-based music.
Exactly, because the EDM stuff and the techno stuff and give it a name stuff, because everything has got a different, so much of it is the same stuff, but they just give it a new name. But anyway, this for lack of a better word, rave type music, whatever it may be called today, okay, is not guitar and drum based. It's not rock and roll. It's not hands-on stuff. It's a whole different animal that I personally don't understand. It's not that I'm hating on it, but so many young people sadly have left rock and roll. It's just a fact, you know?
I mean, this sounds so corny, but like rock and roll shows are essentially all modern. God, this is a bad take, but I'm going to give it anyway. Most, including ourselves, most new rock and roll bands that are starting that play guitars, drums, bass, like your classic thing, they're pastiches. Like the genre got to where it could go for the most part. And anything else is a hybrid, a mixing of them or a throwback. And there's that band that sounds like Led Zeppelin that's huge. There's this band that sounds like so-and-so that's huge. But I think things can evolve and will continue to evolve. But when you're dealing with the sort of the way that music is written, the way that the same basic chords, the same pop melodies, like it's all been done so much that, I remember Rolling Stone. I remember when Radiohead released that record, OK Computer, and I think the headline was something like they're going to save rock and roll, or they're going to kill rock and roll, or this is the last rock and roll record. And then a couple of years later, The Strokes came out, and I freaking love that record. But even that record's kind of a pastiche of like the Velvet Underground and other stuff, Anyway, sorry, things evolve.
No, we're talking.
Whatever.
Stop apologizing. You got nothing to apologize for.
But I still love that. I still love that, but I think there's something lost now. There's something, it doesn't have the credibility that it had, years ago, because...
Well, then there's the thing that makes me sad though, is the loss of the live music shows, the small club shows, things like that, some things that we're so very familiar with. And we would see it, and we still do see it, like again, at my old place, Snapper McGee's, which still exists, the Kingston location does, and they'll still do shows, but everybody that shows up that's, under 35 or 40, they walk in, they'll take a picture of themselves at the show with their phone, and they got to be home before midnight. I don't know what's up with these kids. They just don't have the lust for life or the desire to stay and drink and party and hang out until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, the way my generation did.
I've been trying to convince people when we rarely play live outside of what we do on Twitch and stuff online, but like when we do, I'm like, all right, let's try to get like the doors open at 6, first band at 7. Let's just have this whole thing wrapped up by 10:30.
Well, you have to though.
Yeah.
You have to.
No one will stick around.
No, and I see a lot of shows now that are starting at 7 o'clock at night where we wouldn't start show. We would put on our shows, on the posters rather, 10 o'clock. First band wouldn't go on until 11, and that's the first band. So the headliner's not going on until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, because that's when the meat of the night was, So you just mentioned something I want to ask you about, because I'm unfamiliar, all right? And that is Twitch, okay?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So, which I know has been very good to you, and I want you to give yourself a little plug there, and where people can come and see you on Twitch, and explain exactly what it is to me, because I've never visited.
All right. I'll tell you how we got there. And then, so basically we did the Warp Tour, right? And then we did our own tour after that. We got with like a booking agent shortly after to try to like pick up where Warp Tour left off. And we did this tour, and it was all of the famous like Midwest indie punk venues, like Gabe's Oasis in Iowa City, this famous one in Des Moines. I can't remember. When I say famous, I'm talking like, we're talking like venues that are like 200 cap rooms, but are like,
no, but they're famous in our world. I know exactly what you say.
That's right. And the house in DeKalb, Illinois, I can name a bunch of them, right? And so we got this cool tour. I'm like, this is going to be so freaking great. It's like the second week of college. People are going to, it's in all these college towns. These shows are going to be like, it doesn't matter who's playing, they're going to be filled. And like literally every show is dead. Like I remember we played a show at the house in DeKalb, which would always have been packed. It's like a coffee shop / bar. It always had like a big crowd. The only people were there were the bands and the person that was working the bar, and so I started asking all the people, at these places. I'm like, is this because we're playing, or the band, we were on like a package deal with 3 bands, and they're like, no, just no one comes out anymore. And so anyway, we were going to break up, like not break up because we're married. Like we were just going to stop being a band basically. And, the guy that was our manager at the time, Randy, he's like, you guys should go on Twitch. And I knew what Twitch was. I just thought it was a place that it's a live streaming. It's similar to YouTube. YouTube does live streaming now, but they didn't used to. And Twitch has a whole history. But at the time we got on Twitch, it was famous for being a place where people played video games with an audience watching them. And then you kind of hang out, you play video games.
Well, there you go. Chat. That's why it's something I've never tuned into, because I don't understand that at all. But go ahead.
And I don't either. I cannot watch other people play video games. I'm like, I'll just play the video game myself. But he told me that they were that some musicians. He didn't say bands. He said musicians were going on there and artists, and they were just opening up to everything. And so we got on there, and this is before COVID, about a year before COVID hit. And luckily, because of you getting us on Warp Tour and stuff, we had this small audience. So the first time we live stream on Twitch, we have about 20 people, which at the time I was like, oh, that's not great, because like you see these people playing video games with thousands of people watching them. But like to even get 5 people to watch you on Twitch the first time is a miracle, because it's just like being a band on tour, playing in a city where no one knows you and there's no local app opening, same thing. But we had those 20 people, and that was a big deal. And then it somehow snowballed. And then COVID hit. And by the time COVID hit, we were like, we'd already been on there a year, and we had hit what they call partner status, which meant that like we had an average, audience of 75. We had whatever, blah, 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 blah. And so what we decided to do as we started growing, we already played some covers. So, we kind of learned so you basically need to be on there for 3 or 4 hours at a time, because the longer you're on each session, the more it grows.
Yes.
And so we slowly turned what we were doing live into like basically a mix of like MTV in the 80s and Pee-wee's Playhouse and like the Conan O'Brien show. And now it's this whole thing where like, we take requests, we play songs, we do like little comedy skits with these characters, and we have cartoons, and our friend Chicken Burger Disco makes original animations. And so it's basically a 3-hour variety show, like the Sonny and Cher show or whatever. And every week we do it every Friday night. It's twitch.tv/Fantastic Plastics. You just look us up, Fantastic Plastics, on there. And yeah, it's great. Like on a Friday night, we make more money playing in our basement than we ever did playing live shows at bars or clubs. We don't leave our basement. We play for 3 hours. We can do whatever we want, and because all the 3 of us are so artistic that like we've added all these artistic elements, and we have this crowd that comes every Friday night, like it's like a freaking church, and they show up and they'll stay for the whole time for 3 hours and watch us. And it's, and we usually have around 200 people, but at the end of like a Friday night, like when we look at our stats, we'll have had like 2,000 to 3,000 people having, it's, what it is? It's digital busking. It's like playing in Times Square.
Sure.
But a large cohort of people are staying the whole time. Yep. And they chat. So there's like a chat window where they can participate, and there's like emojis, and there's different things they can do. And then we have interactions where stuff that they can do while they're watching us triggers stuff that happens on the screen. Like they can release different animations, or they can do stuff to us, and there's all this stuff. So it's an interact. And I think someday this will somewhat not kill TV, but it will change TV, because once you get kind of into that ecosystem of watching live streamers where you're participating and the people are talking back to you, can you imagine in the 70s watching Saturday Night Live and you could talk to the cast members while they're doing that?
Amazing. It's amazing.
You know, and anyway, I'm just rambling, but it's
No, you're
really
not
cool.
at
It's
all.
cool
This is
for
really
us.
fascinating
Yeah.
stuff. Again, for me, who's an interesting thing where I don't, I guess, chime in on what you're saying. The new thing with us obviously is the books, which it took off, 5 years now. We've been doing the Tommy Keene detective series, right? And me and my sister. And the first time that we went to CrimeCon, which is a big crime convention, we had sold books, we're doing all right. I think our third book had just come out. And, we went to this first time, we went to a very large convention, not like a little Barnes & Noble signature thing, but this was a convention.
Yeah.
5,000, 6,000 people. I don't know how many people are there, right? And I'm meeting people from all over the world who know who I am from my little tiny picture on the back of the book.
Surreal, right?
And these people are coming up to me and saying, "No, I've read all your stuff," and I'm thinking to myself, "There's no way that you know who I am," but they do, because now it's become a global thing, And so what you're doing right now, what we are doing right now, this podcast thing, I never listened to a podcast in my life until I was on one like 2 years ago. I didn't know this was a thing. I truly didn't. I knew what they were. I knew people did them. I heard of Joe Rogan. I know a lot of news people and political people do them. Man, this is a giant world. It's a giant world. And already I have people that write in from other countries who are listening to me talk nonsense with people like you. It's crazy. It's just crazy to me. So I can see how this Twitch thing could really, well, for you it has. It absolutely has. It's been a blessing and a half.
It's changed our life. It's changed our life because we were touring, playing shows, and it's not about, let me first say, it's not about money. We want to play in front of an audience that's engaged, that wants to watch us more than anything, right? Like that's why we do this, what we do. But playing shows, you're losing money every show. And it's not that you're not just losing money, like you're leaving your house at noon that day to drive 4 hours to someplace to load in, then to wait, then do a sound check, and then wait. And then you get maybe 45 minutes on stage. And now you got to wait 2 more hours to get paid out. And now you got to drive 4 hours back home. And we just walk down our stairs.
Yes.
But I will say, so the good and the bad of what you're talking about, though, about the worldwide audience and just about this, what we're in today. The cool thing about this is, and why your podcast and your books and what we're doing works, is because there are people, in fact, our old manager said this to us. He said, "You'll never be something for everyone, but you will be everything to someone." And I think that
good way to put it.
It is. And I think it's happening across all genres and all niches of art and stuff. And so it's great today. Whatever you're into, you can go down the rabbit hole and get obsessively into that thing and reach out to the people you like and find new people and educate yourself. And it's fascinating. The downside of it is, it's not a downside for us, but it's killing the idea of like these big blockbuster movies, these big TV shows, because people now are falling in love. I don't really mean love, but like the same adulation you would have given to like Brad Pitt in the 90s, they're giving to some streamer that has, maybe 50 people or 100 people watching them. And that's their Brad Pitt now, or you know what I'm trying to say?
Oh, absolutely.
And so I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm going down this rabbit hole, but like, I think Hollywood and all those things, they're dying fast. I think they know they're dying, and TV
I tell you
is
what
dying.
I think on this, okay?
Yeah, give it to me.
I don't want to lose my thought here, but no, a fella, and shame on me, I wish I could think of his name right now. Very interesting guy. Jim Kalamakis or something like that. Shame on me, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he kind of put me on the track of what we're doing right here now, this podcasting thing, right? And we were talking about books. We were talking about other things. He says, you really should have a broader base as far as reaching people. And I was like, my answer, of course, is, as the name of the podcast says, who am I? I'm a nobody. Really, who's going to listen to me? And he said, no, don't shortchange yourself. He says, you are authentic, and authenticity is in. Okay? And I
People
think
smell it too. They know if you're not genuine.
I think where Hollywood fails or has failed us, okay, is that Hollywood movies, big record labels, whatever you want, wherever you want to go with this, okay, is they want to tell us what we like.
Yes.
Okay. where if somebody tunes into the Fantastic Plastics every Friday, they know what they like. If somebody falls in love with my Tommy Keene books and likes Tommy's world, they know what if they don't like the first book, they're not going to pick up the second one.
Yep.
But by the time they're in the fourth or fifth book, they're invested and they want to be in that world. And to them, it's authentic. It's what they like, and they know they like it.
Yep.
To these people now that are watching my stupid idiot shorts that I put on YouTube, again, I'm talking here on the podcast, again, another nobody show, right? Because that's exactly who I am. That's exactly who we are in the big picture, But if they dig it, they dig it, and I'll give them more if they want it. And I think that's the beauty of this social media thing that I never realized for years. I was never on Facebook. I have a brand new Instagram. I never did. I think I was on MySpace for like a half an hour. I started. I was like, this is the most annoying thing in the world. I never did it again. But there is something to this stuff, my friend. There really is. So
I do think though that we're still going to get like nothing will ever replace. Like I think what we're going to get is less of this like low stuff that's like just schlock. Like back when TV and cable they just had to fill time, right? So they're just all these shows that are just like pointless. No one's watching,
sure.
Right? But I think they'll still, hopefully, I hope, like, your big prestige movies, these like things that are like, something that like some people like you and I, we can't throw $100 million to make a spectacular thing. And I think that will still have a place, but I think, I don't know, I'm rambling. I read somewhere that Lorne Michaels sold Saturday Night Live in 2015 for like hundreds of millions of dollars. Like he made out like a band. Like he probably saw it coming, before the TV is just, I don't know. We got way off topic, but anyway, Twitch is great for us. The internet has been fantastic, especially for people that are like passionately nerdy about things, and I mean it nerdy in a positive way, but like if there's something you're into, there's a community there for you. And once
Absolutely.
you find that community in your tribe, you're like, it's awesome.
Well, it really is kind of like the new, and I'll use it more as a what is it? Is it an adjective? I don't know what the right word is. Where it's the new DIY punk rock thing, not punk rock in the music, but in again, people, anybody, look at us. I'm sitting in my son's old bedroom here with this crazy shit on the wall that I put up, and you're sitting in your basement at home, and we're putting on a program.
It's public access TV almost.
Exactly. Only better quality than it was in the 70s.
God, did you ever do it? I had my friend and I had a public access TV when we were in high school or right after high school. Like at the local...
you had a show on public access?
Yeah, I wish I had saved it. I don't know. Like there used to be a rule where the cable companies had to allow a certain amount of it, and so they had a public access channel, and you could just sign up and take a class and do your TV show as long as it met, as long as you weren't cursing and doing pornography or whatever. Like you could basically do anything you want, and it was awesome. No one watched it.
Well, we had that in New York City, and there was actually some pretty good shows on there. All those like Reno 911 people, not all of them, a couple of them came from Manhattan Cable. When I was a kid, well, not a kid, I was in my 20s, and they had, what was one? Almost Vaudeville was the name of it. If you can ever
find it. I watched it. I know it was called
It's called Almost Vaudeville.
Oh, God. You're talking about the guy, right? He was really nerdy and had a guy that was his co-host that never talked, and they'd bring the freakiest people from New York on it.
That was another great show, but that's not the one I'm talking about.
Oh, okay? Yeah.
No, that was a very strange talk show.
And it got picked up by like Comedy Central or MTV for a while. It was called Beyond Vaudeville.
Vaudeville was one of the two sheriffs, the female sheriff and the guy that wore the shorts on Reno 911.
Oh, they were from, then they got a show on MTV called The State.
Right, and they had a show, and it was just a variety show where people would come on and do, a guy would put like 40 cigarettes in his mouth and smoke them at once, a pet trick show or this show,
Thomas Lennon and Carrie Kenny.
I love that show. I used to watch it all the time.
Yeah, his name is Thomas Lennon. Her name is Carrie Kenny, and her dad was from Peoria, and he was the voice of Lion-O and a bunch of like serial, like Count Chocula and stuff.
See, there's the whole comeback right there. Look, we started out in Peoria, and we ended up in Peoria again.
Okay, so I'm going to connect one more dot. I should say part of the reason that we got so lucky on Twitch and took off was because The two people you were talking about later were a part of a show on MTV called The State. It was like an improv comedy troupe,
Yes.
kind of like SCTV and Saturday Night Live, and it was really Gen X, late '90s, early 2000s. Like it was a huge hit, and all those
I
people have gone
remember.
on to do like Reno 911 and a bunch of other shows, Wet Hot American Summer. And then in the early 2000s, another group came along out of New York City that were doing improv in some of the bars and stuff there, and they formed this group called the Whitest Kids You Know, or
I know the
WKUK.
show.
And they got on Twitch during the pandemic because their show had been canceled and they had nothing to do, I guess, because they were touring guys and some of them were writing and stuff. And they decided, so one of the cool things about Twitch, you do your stream, and when you're done with your stream, you've built up this audience. And when you end the stream, instead of just ending and then those people just being left hanging, you can do what they call a raid. And that means you take your entire audience and you're going to dump them into someone else's stream. Now they can leave or they can stay, but usually when you raid someone, if it's someone new, if something looks interesting, you stick around to see. Well, this group called the Whitest Kids You Know, they would have between 1,500 and 2,000 people watching them when we would at that time have about 100 watching us. And they would end their stream and they would dump it into ours. So we'd go from having 100 people watching us to like 1,500 people. And they started doing it for some reason. They just liked us and they did it every Friday night for a year. And our stream just took off. And we used the money we made from the people they brought us, and we turned our basement into a green screen cave. We got better cameras, better lights. We upgraded our whole life thanks to this like sketch comedy group, the Whitest Kids You Know. And to this day, we play one of their comedy songs occasionally. There's a crazy story with this. I shouldn't even tell you. But the guy that was the main guy of the thing, he died. He fell off his balcony. Right after he raided us one night, he like just got off the air and something happened and he fell off his balcony and died. And so to this day, we pay tribute to him forever.
Yeah.
And his name was Trevor Moore, and he has a bunch of videos on YouTube, and he was a big deal at the time. But his other members, Zach Krieger, who was in the Whitest Kids You Know, he like wrote, directed, and produced this movie a couple of years ago that became this big hit called Barbarian. And now this guy is like,
but I saw Barbarian. I remember.
Yeah. And he was from the Whitest Kids You Know, and he was part of the group of people that was rating us and watching us. And now this guy got like a $200 million Hollywood like production deal, and he's like producing all these movies. It's like, but that's the power of the internet. That's the power of Twitch. There's no reason those guys should have ever even knew we existed, let alone had a hand in our success. But it was their generosity. They weren't giving us money. They were just telling their audience, hey, you guys might like these weirdos on Twitch. And
right.
Anyway, okay, sorry, I rambled way too long.
No, not at all.
Very
not
exciting.
Yeah, but that's how it works with this stuff, though. You just fall into things, you know. And they saw you, they liked you, they recommended you, and again, they were leaving again with 1,500, 2,000 people watching them, and they flipped them over to you. Very, very interesting.
But part of the reason that all worked for us was, they say, what is it like? I can't remember what the term is, but basically, it's not really luck. The opportunity is being ready when the opportunity hits you.
Yes.
And we're so well, we know how to put on a show from all the years of doing punk rock stuff. In Warped Tour kicked our ass. First going to New York kicked our ass, because in New York City, when you play a show, they give you a schedule. They do what they call cattle call shows or showcase shows, which means there's going to be a bar. There's going to be 5 or 6 bands that night. And there's a schedule. And, the first band starts at 7, they're done at 7:45. Second band starts at 8. And if you're a minute late, you've lost a minute of your set. Like, they will cut the power mid-song. So you learn how to like set up and tear down. You learn how to be tight. Warped Tour is even harder because, sometimes it was like, okay, you guys have 26 minutes tonight. It's like, and like not a minute more. And also not a minute less. And so anyway, you get really good at performing. And so where a lot of people make a mistake on Twitch is they get a raid from a big group of people, and then they fuck around for a while and don't do the thing they're good at, like they get so, or whatever. But like when we would get those raids, we knew like, if we're talking, we stop talking, we play a song, and we don't play the song. We play our best song, but that came from years of, and stuff you helped us with, and so anyway, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with just sitting around talking, but like if you get a big raid, you got to, because people, they're in, time, what is it? Short attention spans,
Exactly.
You got to be on. Okay. Next thing I know, I'm sitting here talking to Travis on a podcast.
Yes. It's been a strange few years, my friend. It has. So,
Your friend
Well, you know what?
JT has been blowing up.
What's that?
Your friend JT has been blowing up.
Yeah, he's doing very well. He's doing JT Habersack, comedian, is doing very well. Yep.
Co-founder of Altercation Records with you.
Correct. Yeah, he's working hard. He's got a new book coming out. You got to check it out. So
No, I can't wait. I knew he was writing it.
I had him on the show. Well, geez, but by the time this airs, it'll be a couple of months ago. So, he was on the show, and yeah, he's doing very well. And I'm super glad to see that you guys are still rocking. I really
thank
am.
you.
And hopefully, we'll turn some of our fans and turn them into your fans. We'll do a raid. We'll see if I can get,
yeah, and vice versa, because there's
some
true
of our
crime.
Another Nobody fans to tune into you. So
we'll do the same because people love true crime, and you not only just, but you have like legit, like you were a New York City detective.
Yes, sir. Seems like a movie I watched once.
I'll never forget. You were at our apartment in Washington Heights, and you were filming a pilot for a potential TV show.
Yes,
with us.
We did a thing for Travel Channel. Yeah.
And I remember we had these white plastic like egg-shaped chairs, and you sat down and we heard this like scratch noise and like a clunk, and it was like your gun. We're like, you can't have a gun in New York City. And you go, I can have one. It's like, okay.
That's right. You weren't aware of my past life at the time.
No, and I remember being on tour at some places, and you would come with us sometimes, and I was very thankful to have you with us. We always got paid. I don't know how.
You got to pay the bands,
That's right.
You got to pay the bands. That's the rule. So.
Oh, shit. Okay.
All right, my friend. You know what? It's been a great sit down with you. I'm so glad you came to sit with me. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
I don't know. Anything else you want to plug before you leave?
We're just...
You got a new album? Any new music coming out?
We're on Twitch every Friday night. We start at 9 p.m. Eastern. We go for about 3 hours. But we put out a couple records since we've been on Twitch, which was cool because the people on Twitch kind of helped in multiple ways. Like, it was really cool having people be part of the process of writing and recording. And a funny thing, a guy that's in Devo right now, Josh Hager, has mixed and mastered our last records, and now Devo's like blowing up again, and that's pretty cool. Sorry, that's a name drop. I shouldn't name drop. But we're on Spotify. We're at Amazon, Apple, Deezer. You can find us everywhere.
Everywhere. The Fantastic Plastics.
And our best record is still the one that you put out for us, Devolver. It's got the classics.
I was a big fan, man. I love that record. I do.
I appreciate it. I as an artist, I'm like, man, I wish we would have spent some money to re-record it and make it sound better. But now, years later, listen, I'm like, no, it's perfect. It was a time capsule.
Well, it is what it is. It was perfect as it was. I agree. Devolver is a great record. So everybody, find that record. Get on your Spotify. Go to the record store if there's any left where anybody lives, and buy yourself a Fantastic Plastics Devolver. You'd be happy you did. So
duty now, sir.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Give my best to your lovely wife, all right?
I will. I know she's off camera somewhere, but I've seen her passing through, so she's keeping an ear on me, making sure I'm not being too
Tyson,
rushed.
All the best, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Travis. Goodbye.
All right, there you go. Tyson Plastic, everybody. Really nice fella. I always really, really liked him, and I'm so happy he came to sit with me today. Now, do yourselves a favor. Fantastic Plastics. Look them up. Check them out. Buy some records. Go to that Twitch thing. Check them out on Spotify, wherever you get your music from. And hopefully you like them. I hope you do like them, because I really do. And other than that, do the right thing, please. Hit the like. Hit the subscribe. And we will see you all next week. All the best, my friends. Listen up. This one's important. I'd like to try to encourage you, please, to give to the Stephen Siller Foundation, Tunnel to Towers, at T2T.org. That's letter T, number 2, letter T.org. Do good for those who've done good for you.